Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, or should I say your previous host. I am so excited to welcome Maddie Roach onto the podcast as your newest host. Maddie joined our team, if you're not aware, over 10 years ago to be part of the she was employee number one here at XYPN and is our newest executive business coach. And so really excited for her to be here to share her expertise with all of the listeners around what it actually takes to start, run, and grow your own financial planning firm. So Maddie, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate you passing the baton. Hello, listeners. I am so excited to be returning to XYPN Radio. I am so looking forward to diving into the nuances, the challenges, and the beauty that comes with starting your own firm with all of the incredible guests we have lined up for you this year.
So with that, I'm so excited to be handing it off to Maddie, and she'll be your host going forward.
Hello, Mike. Welcome to XYPN Radio. It is so nice to have you today.
Yeah, Maddie, thanks. It's a surreal moment. I feel like I've arrived to be on the podcast. I've listened to so many of them.
That's awesome.
Yep, I'm excited.
Yes, I am excited as well. And you have arrived. And I must give you some credit for what you've done up until now. You have built a really impressive firm. And I would love for you to introduce it and tell us a bit about who you serve.
Yeah, sure. So Mike Zung, my firm is called Java Wealth Planning. I'm based in Kansas City, and the focus is on the equity compensation, tech professionals, and I guess more recently I've kind of added the progressives in tech, as far as kind of the trying to niche down a little bit more.
Great. We'll get to that niche in just a minute. But tell us about your professional journey to entrepreneurship. Where were you and what brought you here?
Yeah. So like a lot of other people that join XY, I'm a career changer. So I started in software development. So I got a computer science degree, and I was in software development and architecture for almost 20 years. And so yeah, but that's where I started. And then yeah, like I just kind of going into the a little bit of the story of how I got to here. It was just one of those things where, as I like this, I try not to say it's a midlife crisis, but it was right before I turned 40 that I just kind of got to this place where I was thinking about what I wanted to, it's like what did I want to do and what kind of impact did I want to have.
Wow.
And in software development, the pay is good, the people are great. I love everybody that I was working with, but just the actual work that I was doing didn't really. It wasn't something that was just like, oh, I'm excited to do X right now. And so yeah, I just kind of I had that realization and just thought that, like, okay, what is something else that I am passionate about, and then I feel I can have a more direct impact. And financial, kind of the whole financial planning, financial world was one that had been an interest for a really long time. And so it's just like, and my approach is just like, I'm just going to start taking steps in this direction, with no grand plan necessarily, and just see where it leads me.
Wow. From software development to financial planning, what had you dabbled in before? When you say you were interested and passionate about it before, what did that look like?
Yeah. So, first it was just as far as the content that I was consuming. It was dating myself. It's back whenever iPods really first came out and they were black and white. I was listening to different podcasts. Starting with like Dave Ramsey, and then there's the Money Guy podcast and different ones like that. So I was just consuming that content a lot. And then actually at kind of the first exposure to actually having that experience of talking to people about financial topics, what started at I was doing the Financial Peace University classes at my church, right? It's the Dave Ramsey stuff. So love him or hate him. I have mixed feelings, but but it was a thing where, like, having that experience of talking to people about this is like, wow, I really like this. Really gets me excited. Like, and I really like the kind of that mix of the the technical aspect of things and the numbers, and then adding with that personal side of it, and really fitting it to their, personal situation, and like actually feeling like, wow, I feel like there's this direct correlation with my actions and the result, right? There's not the 6 degrees of separation that's within software development, where you say, if I do X, then Y, then Z, then blah blah blah, right?
Mhm. Yes, I love that. And kudos for you for chasing the actual substance of work. I think so many people kind of just coast and say, "Yeah, I'll have a job and a paycheck and I'll just use my extra time to do my side projects and my passion projects." But for you, you really said, "No, when I'm working, you want to substantively enjoy it." So that's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we didn't talk about this in pre-show, but so hopefully this doesn't come out of right field. But so a lot of that, just I kind of think about that kind of more existential stuff a little bit more, from because both my parents have, like, they passed away relatively young, and so whenever I think about kind of the time that I have, that it's like, okay, like I want to make the most, as soon as possible. So yeah, so that was definitely part of it too, of just like, what do I want to do? It's not all about me, but it's like, hey, how do I want to best um use my time, right?
Totally. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that that shows up in how you show up with your clients.
Hmm.
Just a real cognizant nature of just how long we have.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's one of the main things that I whenever I talk to people about stuff, is we actually I created this calendar view, that it's like a 7 by 12 grid, where it has the months and then the next 7 years, and then we actually talk about, like, okay, what do we want this year to look like? What do we want, 2 to 5 years to look like? And actually having it built out as far as months and years, not just like a straight timeline. Like, you can kind of feel the time a little bit uh, more realistically whenever you see it like that.
Talk about life planning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, Mike, you had dabbled in financial planning through kind of the Dave Ramsey curriculum and working at your church, but how did you make the leap to, like, I'm actually going to go start my own RIA?
Right. Well, I mean, part of it is I have to attribute XYPN for part of it, because whenever I started listening, like I was saying, I was listening to different podcasts, and it was a thing where I was listening to a financial independence podcast, and then Michael Kitts was on it, and then so I started listening to Kitts' stuff, and which brought me to XYPN, and it was actually a particular XYPN episode with Lyndon Cornett. It was like episode, I don't
Yes.
know, like 60 or something like that, right? Where whenever I was hearing her story, and I was thinking, it's like, oh, like, this is actually, like, I really feel like I relate to this, and it feels like like it's it's something that I could kind of start, like I said, just start to take steps towards this, right? Because at the time, she was in tech and working with Intel employees, and like, hey, I could kind of like just carve out this little bit, like, because I wasn't gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna just be everything to everybody, work with retirees and all that stuff. It's like, hey, I know my lane, I know what I can do, and so maybe I'll just take small steps and do that, right? So yeah, and then it was a thing where it was while I was still working full time, that it's like, hey, like I could join XYPN and just start walking down this path, and just start, and just, but I would still start very part time, right? So that I still had the security of my current job, but then, and making this incremental step towards, like, hey, what would it look like if I started a firm?
Great. You may just be a Lyndon Cornett for future listeners and listening right now. That is the second shout out in a row for Lyndon Cornett. So,
Oh, really?
hi, Lyndon. Nice job. Yeah. That's wonderful. So you did start part time. Is that right?
Yeah. So yeah, it was in 2018. Yeah, so I joined XY in, I think, March of 2018. And then yeah, so it was a thing where I started part-time, and was still working full-time in tech. through 2018, and then also all of 2019 that I
Wow.
was still working full time.
Yeah. Do you recommend that for folks?
Um, I don't know. Yes and no. I mean, there's definitely there's the security of having having an income, because I mean my wife does work, but like I wouldn't have been able to just completely quit cold turkey, and like, and I know from my for myself, like I wouldn't be I my how do I say it? The My personality isn't one where like, oh, I thrive on that pressure, and like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna build this business. Like that's not the way that I roll. Um, so yeah, I can see that, but it is definitely a challenge to where like it's tough to balance everything. And so I think there gets to be a point, and for me it was actually earlier than I was initially planning, to say, hey, I need to stop one and go completely, I have to go all in order to actually make this work. Right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just stay on those first 2 years with me while you were doing this part time. I know a lot of listeners are weighing that decision.
Mhm.
And I think for you to even just have the self awareness to say, I don't have the personality to not have the income,
Right.
is a beautiful reminder to listeners that they
Right.
should really be trusting themselves as they go out to do this journey, because you are solo and
Right.
this is your business, and you do need to be honoring yourself in that way. So what weren't you expecting kind of in the first 2 years? What was a curveball that changed perspective for you at times?
Um, I guess how difficult it would be uh to market, to get in
Mm,
front of people, and to actually how difficult it was to get business. It I do remember whenever I launched and thinking that it's like, hey, I'm going to make this website live, I'm going to have my Calendly stuff and all that. That it's like, oh boy, I better be ready, because people are going to be calling here pretty soon, right? But
any minute.
that is not how it happens. Even yeah, so yeah, I was very naive as far as how much went into actual planning work versus
Mhm.
how much went into the marketing sales side. And yeah, just kind of thinking like, hey, I'm launching a financial planning business. The planning work is maybe a fourth of what you do.
Wow.
It's especially early on, right? Like whenever you don't have any clients, then it's like there's not a whole lot of planning work to do, and everything is about yeah, just trying to create activity. And and it's and it has absolutely nothing to do with how well you know retirement accounts and taxes and stuff like that.
Mm. I'm so glad you made that distinction, because there's one thing of following the to-dos of the marketing launch plan and making the website and getting your Calendly, like you say. But then you have this verb, of taking action.
Mhm.
And that's the part that I think we underestimate. And as you've just said, you underestimated yourself. So what was activity in your mind? Like how would new advisors begin to start taking action on their marketing?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as what I was doing was initially was, I was just like, okay, maybe I need to try to write a blog, or and start creating some content. Yeah, creating content. Right. So for me at first it was yeah, trying to do a blog, trying to do a newsletter. And what I realized for myself personally is that my writing, while the end product is okay, is fine, the process takes a really really long time for me. And so it's like, okay, nope, I'm not going to do that, right? And so what I ended up doing was like starting to do more video type stuff.
Mm,
And then so yeah, I have the whiteboard behind me. So it was a thing where coming from software development and architecture, like what I felt really comfortable with and helped my mind work is to say, hey, how do I visualize kind of this more ethereal concept, right? And so I was just like, hey, maybe I should just start doing videos, and I'll just try to explain different things through video and through a whiteboard, right? And so that's what my content ended up being, where I would create these videos, I put it on YouTube, nobody would watch it, of course. Then put it on social media and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, but it was so that's essentially what I was doing, and I actually remember the very first XYPN live that I went to after I started doing videos, and like I was still just like very new and didn't really know anybody. But I remember talking with somebody that whenever I mentioned that I was starting to do videos, he like looks at me, he's like, "I've seen these videos, like those are really good." I was like, "Oh wow, thanks."
Wow, I
Oh
love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Playing to your strengths. I think that's such a good reminder that
yeah,
one, you knew, no, blogging's not going to work because it takes too much time. You feel
right,
more and slow doing videos, but then you tapped into your strength of your background and
right,
your experience building out architecture for systems and explanations. And that I think is just such a crucial reminder to folks that are listening that you don't need to do everything. You
right.
need to commit to the things that you're good at, and honesty and a good inventory is what you need to do before you launch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely there are so many different ways that you could approach it, and yeah, don't feel like you have to do everything, but that's like focus on the one thing. And I'm saying this to myself as much as anything because like I know right now it's like if I just focused more on YouTube right now and like I could just turn off all social media, like get out of Twitter, get out of LinkedIn and all that stuff and just focus on this, then I think that like things would work better. But like yeah, so it's like you don't need to do everything, just pick one thing that you're strong at and feel like you can stick with, and just double down on that.
Totally double down on it. And it's so coincidental that 2 episodes ago, Alan, his final episode was with Patrick King, and he
Yeah,
talked all about his YouTube videos. And it
yeah,
was funny because as I was researching you, I saw some of Patrick King's videos
yep.
on the recommended list. So tell me, I mean, just like writing a blog and sending a newsletter, and you said it like no one's watching, you don't know how many people are reading. What was the trajectory for it? When did you start getting traction?
Oh yeah, yeah. For you to for me, it was, let's see. I mean, I started doing videos, I think early 2019 or something. But basically, it was for the first year. It was crickets. It was nothing, right?
Oh,
And then I did a video that just explained incentive stock options, and then I would go back and of course, whenever you're early on and you don't have a whole lot of clients and you're just watching all of these different analytics and vanity metrics and stuff like that, and I just saw that one video that's like, oh hey, this is actually getting some fairly consistent views. It's like, okay. And then so I did one on RSUs, on restricted stock units, and then that one took off a little bit more. And I mean, and my version of taking off is like right now. I mean, I think that RSU video is my most popular, and it has almost 100,000 views. That's like
oh,
that. Yeah, like I'm not because I met Patrick at the last XYP, and like he had one of his videos has like a couple million views on it or something like that.
oh,
So
wow.
um, so yeah, it was yeah. So as far as the trajectory goes, it was like there was nothing, but then what and I guess maybe another plug for the whole niche idea. Once I started talking specifically about equity compensation stuff, then it's like, oh, I've found something here where people are looking more specifically for this, and there's not a whole lot of content that can explain it very well.
Mm,
So yeah, so it's basically, once I got into the all the equity stuff, so ESPPs and talking about non-qualified stock options, then that's kind of where the traction came from. And then so I kind of again doubled down on that and got more equity comp specific. I would do YouTube lives with guests and stuff like that. And
yeah.
so that's kind of what let that grow for a while.
And do you know if any of your existing clients found you because of YouTube?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there. I mean, it was. I remember the first one that
Wow.
reached out that said like, "Hey, I found you on YouTube." I thought it was a joke. I was like, "No way." So, but yeah, now it's kind of wild where it's not necessarily a ton, but it's probably one or two a month or so. And the nice thing about YouTube is that I actually haven't put out a whole lot of new content, but the evergreen stuff works well enough to where I still get people that reach out to say like, yeah, saw your YouTube channel. And so I figured I'd reach out. So
Incredible. I underestimate the power of YouTube. It is a major, major player. And
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess I talked at the last XYPN about doing YouTube stuff, and yeah, that's some of the main messaging is that, you do evergreen content, and yeah, you just have good approachable stuff, and then whether people find you organically on YouTube, or if they find you somewhere else and then see that you have a YouTube channel and kind of vet what you know and in your style, then that definitely makes the process a lot easier.
Mike, I'd love to circle back on a answer that you gave just a bit ago about your niche. Can you just describe kind of your evolution of your niche and how you've described it?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I knew whenever I started that's like, okay, I'm going to work with tech professionals because, that's the world that I come from. Right. Just being that software development, it's like I can literally speak the language that they speak. And I guess a little nod to the firm name Java Wealth is because I was a Java developer. That was the programming language that I was uh, doing. So that was the initial part. And first I was thinking like, okay, it's going to be in Kansas City. But then like as I was doing it, then I would get people that were, that had more equity compensation, because actually the equity comp side wasn't initially on my radar. It was more just the angle, right? But then the equity compensation was like, okay, now this is a real tangible thing that's more complicated. There can be mistakes that have a large financial impact. So it's like, okay, I found that acute pain point now. So that's kind of where I was for a good while. But then more recently, in trying to refine things a little bit more, thinking of like, okay, like this is the niche as far as the technical side of it. But then who are the people that I really like working with, right? And what some of the stuff that I identified was that from a like the perspective of like the dynamics for client couples, right? And then just kind of like I guess something that you can be afforded to do whenever you're a solo business and you're kind of having a relatively small client load. Like you can be a little bit more selective of the types of clients that you want to work with, right? And kind of their value system, right? To where it's like, okay, I'm much more on the kind of on that progressive side of the spectrum. There was actually one client where I was actually helping with the like budgeting and cash flow and stuff like that. And so like to the transaction level, right? And, like seeing what's going on in the transaction world. And then like one of the expenses had a name on it, and it's like, okay, well, I need to help categorize this. So what is it? And the only thing that came up from a Google search was like we'll just say somebody who was a public figure that supported uh, ideals that I did not align with in any way. And I was just like, oh man, does this like I feel conflicted from a client perspective of like, okay, I have the fiduciary duty to help this client, right? But then from a ideal perspective, it's like, oh wow, this is not the right fit. And
Wow.
so for me, kind of holding myself out is like, hey, like I'm a business that I want to be like open and affirming to all different types of clients, to where like, okay, this wouldn't align, right? So there's definitely that part. And then also just having clients that value the kind of the collaboration and voice of both partners, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't want to have one where like I was only talking to, and I know I'm somewhat generalizing, but like the just the husband is like, she doesn't want to talk about investments. I'm the only one. Like you don't need to talk to her. You can talk to me. I'm just like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a little bit of the addition of like, okay, I want to get even further into like, this is the ideal client that I want to work with.
Beautiful. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your side project, Beautiful Financial Plans. Could you tell the listeners a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess the origin story for the Beautiful Financial Plan is, like I was saying, whenever I first launched, and I was, the most of the work that I was doing was project type work. And so as I was doing that and just developing out what the process was and what the project would look like, I wanted to have I was thinking I need to have a deliverable at the end of it that, can succinctly spell out everything that we talked about and next steps and all that kind of stuff. And so I was workshopping different ideas for how to show that, created kind of this Sankey diagram cash flow, which has kind of taken off since then, just kind of in the industry at large, and a few other things like the calendar I just mentioned. And so I did that, and one of the study groups that I was in, sometimes we'd bring case studies and talk about stuff, and I would show like what that plan looked like, right, just to kind of help describe what the situation was. And then whenever it was in, I guess, the fall of 2021, that Michael Kitsis went on to the XYPN message board and said, "Hey, does anybody create their own planning deliverable?" And somebody in my study group tagged me and said, like, "Hey, he does." And so I created a template version of it, and I put it out there, and that got me invited onto the to do one of the Kitsis Value Summits.
Mm.
So yeah, the 2021 Kitsis Value Summit. And so it's just like, okay, like go do that. And I did my half hour presentation or talk about, like, hey, this is what it is, this is how it works. Because yeah, those value summits, a big part of what it's show don't tell is one of the things that they say. And so I showed a little bit of behind the scenes of how it works and everything. And then um and then and, and then also I followed Jeremy Walter, um, who had a one-page financial plan that he had kind of put out there to the world. He partnered with Carl Richards with that, and and then after that value summit, then I would have advisors reaching out to me that say like, "Hey, like, do you sell this as a template?" And yeah, I was just like, "No, I don't, but I guess I can, right?" And so it was a thing where I actually talked to Jeremy a little bit afterwards too, and he was very encouraging um, to get that. It's like, hey, yeah, this is something that is valuable that you should put out there too. And so I worked on kind of creating the template that's, both, because I use Google Suite stuff, so I had like a Google version, and then I like figured there's still a lot of people on PowerPoint and Excel, so I created a version there, and then I released that, and stood up the Kajabi site, and opened it up for business, and just be like, all right, here it is, everybody.
Incredible. And listeners, we will include this in the show notes, but this is a separate website, a separate and distinct entity, in fact,
Yeah.
from your RIA. Is that right, Mike?
Yep. Yeah. So I created a whole separate business, a whole separate LLC that's for like any sort of advisor facing type stuff. Which it's primarily this, but I've done a little bit of like consulting type work too. But yeah, but it's gone well beyond any expectation that I had before. I think there's almost like 150 advisors that have purchased the thing. So
Incredible.
yeah.
So at some point, Mike, you must have gone full time, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 I did eventually quit.
Full circle. Let's
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
back to that decision.
Yeah, so that was it was around the summer of 2019. So I've been trying to juggle both for a little over a year, and I got to this place where, one of my big whys for doing this was like, hey, I want to have some time freedom while my kids are at ages that they still want to hang out with me, right? And but with working full time and then also trying to do this other thing part time, is like actually the opposite is happening right now.
Wow.
And so, like I was saying, I was very cognizant of the time part of it. So it's just like, okay, we're going to, like, I talked to my wife, it's like, okay, let's, like, what if I quit at the end of this year? Right. And so we, made that decision. So we just started, saving pretty aggressively, because it was the idea of like, I'm going to quit at the end of 2019, and then go full time 2020, and I won't plan on making any money. Like, I won't like take a salary for the first year. Right. And so yeah, so that's what we did. And the whole time with my other employer, the nice thing about being a career changer is you can be more upfront of your thoughts of leaving, right? So from the jump, whenever I launched the business, I told my boss, that is like, hey, this is eventually the direction that I want to go in.
Right.
So yeah, so I was very upfront with them and say like, hey, at the end of the year, I'm gonna stop and start doing it full time, and that's what I did.
Oh, I love that you worked with yourself and your family about when the right time was. But for context for our listeners, how many clients were you serving at that point? What was your revenue?
Um, not very much. I mean, like I was saying, it was primarily doing project type work. So I think from an ongoing client, whenever I started, I think I only had like 2 or 3
Okay.
ongoing. Um, and so yeah, and then revenue while I was part time was pretty flat. Like, it was revenue and expenses almost equaled each other out. And then my first full year, even my revenue at the end of the year was only $10,000-15,000, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you give a little perspective into kind of your current levels of revenue and client numbers and where you expect to be by the end of the year?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now I have 34 clients ongoing. I've also stopped doing project work. I made that shift a little over a year ago to focus on like, hey, I want to focus solely on ongoing relationships. And so that's what I'm currently doing. Part of me is flirting with the idea of doing a select number of projects, but that's to be TBD.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's the number of clients right now. And then gross revenue by the end of the year, I'm hoping to be around 250,000.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
I would love to know about your switch from project to ongoing. A
Mm,
lot of people come in and feel like the value delivery of a project-based engagement is much clearer for
mhm.
consumers and prospective clients, and that ongoing just is a harder sell.
Yeah.
So, did you feel that, and what was your experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. I still feel that, because and especially in, I guess, just to uh, delve away from it a little bit, is that especially for the tech professional world, where, and especially with equity compensation stuff, a lot of times it is just like, I have this acute problem that I want to have solved, but I don't want you to manage my money, right? so so there's a lot of the people that I still talk to right now, they are primarily looking for projects, right? And so for that, like, it's just like, well, I don't do that right now, and so here's a list of people that I know are great, and so I refer out quite a bit right now, actually. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit right now. As far as the the original question of like what that transition was like, I mean, I guess kind of similar, where yeah, like I would get a decent amount of people that are just looking for projects, and like I was trying to stick to my guns, right? And not do that. But it was a thing where it was taking up so much time, and part of it could be a pricing problem from my side too, where my projects were priced too low. But it was like, it was a whole lot of work for not necessarily a whole lot of revenue.
Mm.
And then also the like, I felt like with ongoing clients, a big part of the value is the actual implementation and doing the work side by side with them, and making sure that things get accomplished.
I'm I've got so many questions just based on that answer. But I appreciate what you're saying around the amount of work for a project, because I imagine as a fiduciary advisor, you're going to want to give them comprehensive financial planning
Right.
in that project. So you end up just kind of casting this much broader net and doing much more legwork to deliver this one-off project. Was that your experience?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's still a problem now, even with ongoing stuff too, where it's just like I feel like I want to be like comprehensive to a fault almost,
Yeah.
like getting into all sorts of details and like invite me into your YNAB and we're going to help categorize everything,
Mm.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, so yeah, the project work, it was definitely a lot of work. There is a part of it that's also cleaner, where you can kind of define like these are the meetings that we have. Whenever we're done, here's your deliverable. You know,
Okay.
go, go do your thing now. So from that perspective, it's definitely cleaner. And then also just from that my path from a career changer, doing a lot of projects definitely built up my own confidence in my own process of like, okay, now that I'm getting more reps and I'm doing this, and it felt more approachable than like this automatic like, hey, transfer your life savings over to me and I'm gonna manage it for you or something like that, right? Where it's
Totally.
like the project work felt a lot more, um, yeah, a lot more approachable.
Yeah, and there are a lot of advisors who run their businesses on project-based
Mhm. Yeah,
engagements, and you're referring folks to them. But I'm interested in from the kind of prospective client mindset. What was it about the I don't want you to manage my assets component? Was the price tag, or were they do-it-yourselfers, or what were you sensing from this group of people around their hesitation with ongoing?
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is there's definitely a big DIY component to it, and yeah, that and right, I guess I can completely empathize with like not wanting to, like, moving your money is so personal, right? And so asking someone to say, hey, yeah, go ahead and transfer over, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, you know that feels that's a very personal ask, right? So I guess all of us from the advisor planner community, like, we need to not take that lightly, right?
Wow.
And be flippant about it. And so it's like I completely understand that side of it. And there's just kind of in the tech world, there's a really strong DIY feeling, kind of the fire community, and yeah, and just like from the straight investment perspective, uh, like, I don't proclaim to be able to beat the market. I'm a bogle head index kind of investor, so pretty vanilla from that perspective. So yeah, so I can completely understand that. I think it's just kind of this level of commitment thing of like, hey, I don't want to feel like I'm signing up for, a lifetime commitment or anything like
So how do you get people to sign up for lifetime commitments,
that.
Mike?
I think there's I feel like it's just finding the people that do value that ongoing collaboration. Because whenever I think about the ongoing clients that I have right now, that, especially, that kind of ideal avatar, like there are some clients that, like, everything, we're basically saying like, hey, we are in this together. And if I ever have any questions, then I can reach out and we can get this stuff done together, and kind of like having that ongoing conversation and thinking partner, and also just kind of the forcing mechanisms of, hey, we're getting all of us are getting together and having these financial conversations on a regular basis, to keep it, somewhat top of mind, right? So I think it's just that, like, different people are looking for different services. And so for me, it's somewhat of a game of patience of finding that group of people that are valuing that ongoing relationship and want to do that, for at least the time. And I do say that it's like, hey, if after a year or two you feel empowered to do this on your own, then great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But I'm interested in the folks that are kind of do-it-yourselfers and project that you were serving in a project-based capacity. Was it that they knew ongoing was an option, or did you sense that like some more education around what that real value would be, and kind of a pivot towards how you sold them essentially on it would have helped them move towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess going back to actually the way that I first was doing it, I actually did a project for everybody. And
Mm,
then where it's just like, hey, everyone starts with a financial plan. And then at the end of it, I would then come around to say, okay, we're done with this. You can either go do it yourself, or if you want to move to ongoing, then this is what it would look like. Right. And so I actually went away from that, just from the perspective of my own terrible sales
mm,
skill, to where like I would do projects, and even if I felt like it would be very beneficial for the client to move ongoing, it was a second friction point,
mm,
to where it's like, okay, I essentially have to do a second sale in
right.
quotes. And so it's just like, yeah, I don't know if I necessarily love that. And then but yeah, as far, I don't know if I would necessarily say that there people didn't know that it was an option. It's just, it to me, it's as much as the psychology of like, if you had 3 bottles of wine, there's a cheap one, there's an expensive one, and then there's kind of this middle one. Everyone picks that middle one, right?
Totally.
And that's kind of what was happening with me, where like I had like a 1-2 meeting project, a full plan and ongoing, and like everyone was like, okay, I'm going to do this plan, right?
Mm.
So
Wow. Okay, great. Yeah, we've talked a lot internally about, those same ideas of just even on websites, what's in the middle and
yeah,
bolded tends to be, it's our eyes
yeah.
go there, things like that. Okay, so talk to me about kind of your present day service model and fee structure. How have you matched it to the value you believe you deliver to these ongoing clients?
Yeah, so the fee structure that I have, it's essentially flat fees, but it's tiered based on kind of overall assets, overall portfolio value, right? So it's not just managed assets. It's like, okay, what's kind of your net worth minus your house, essentially, right? And then so it's just a flat fee tiered based on that. And then I also have just a little bit of complexity stuff for if you have RSUs and if you have stock options, because of the extra complexity that's around that. So, and it's, I have a calculator on my website to where you can just play with the numbers, and then you just see what the flat fee is based on that.
Beautiful. Now, I do know you didn't start at the flat fee that you're currently at. So, why don't you give the listeners a little bit of perspective around what they can expect in terms of raising fees over the first several
Right.
years?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So whenever I launched, my minimum fee was $1,800 a year for everything, like for all the planning and all the investment management. I think it was like, if you had less than $500,000, then that or 250, one of those. But yeah, so that's where it started, and then kind of tiered up somewhat, somewhat, very gradually, from there. And then now I've gotten it to where the minimum is 6,000, and then
Mm,
it kind of does similar stuff where it tiers up based on that.
wow. I work with a lot of clients and I've worked with many members over the years that just continue to question the value that they're delivering on an
Yep.
ongoing basis to justify the $6,000 or the
Yep.
$10,000 or whatever it may be. How do you do what gymnastics are going on in your head about the
Yeah.
value you
Yeah.
deliver?
Yeah, and also, I guess another thing with the tech people, it's like they ask that question a lot too. It's just like, what value am I going to get for, 6,000, $8,000, whatever, a year, right? Um, and it's definitely, it can be a difficult question to answer. Like, it's definitely something that I wrestle with sometimes too, right? Um, but like, basically, there's some of the quantifiable stuff of, for people to say like, hey, I know that right now you have all of these options, and if we, like, if you do this wrong, then you could mess up, from a tax perspective or from an investment perspective, to the tune of like many thousands of dollars. So like, just like one or two moves here will easily pay for, will justify the fee, right? So there's the quantifiable side of it, but then for, as much as anything, it's kind of more the qualitative side of it too. Of, I mean, like, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in this podcast, but kind of that thinking partner, and staying on top of things, and the ongoing just actually implementation, making sure things get done right, and clients never say it, but the peace of mind of like, okay, I know that we have this part of our world taken care of.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that word back up, implementation. That
Mhm.
is the value, especially with complex financial plans. And I'm sure after, kind of the initial plan delivery, there's a whole page worth of things that they're gonna need to do
Right.
to move the needle forward. So really beautiful kind of evolution that you've taken. If you're okay with it, I'd love to pivot a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, sure.
So you described yourself as an introvert, and I bet that will come to us as a surprise to our listeners because you are deeply engaging. But I think let's first just how do you define introvert?
um so the way that I've heard it be defined is that, like, how do you what energizes you, right? And doing a whole lot of talking and socializing and all
Oh,
that stuff, like, that is not energizing to me. Like, I feel pretty beat. And even client conversations, right?
mm,
Client meetings, like, I while I'm in it, like, I feel like I'm relatively locked in. I enjoy it, but after I'm done, then it's like I feel like I need to take a nap, right?
wow.
And yeah, so there's definitely that part, and then there's also just the part of, like, just this level of feeling somewhat awkward in, like, going into a room with a lot of people, and especially if you don't know anybody. Like, I am not one that can just, like, strike up a conversation and work a room, and be able to do that very well in a large group setting.
Mm. How do you think you've used that information about yourself to your advantage as you've navigated the past several years?
Yeah. Um, well, I guess one, from the client part, limiting how many meetings I have in a day. That's one where
Wow.
I do try to do a version of a surge type meeting, but I cap it, like, to where, like, 3 meetings a day, and then if I look at a week and there's, say, 7 meetings, and it's like, okay, that week, like, I can't do anything else that week,
Yep.
right? So yeah, so from that side, that's how it kind of informs the actual business side of it. Um, I guess from a sales type, a marketing type perspective, that, yeah, the version of marketing and the way that I put myself out there is a much more kind of I guess solo or personal, like, way, to where it's like I don't try to do like networking events, and I don't try to do anything with kind of large crowds, where it's like, instead, I'm in a room by myself making a video explaining things, and then the bravery from that is just like, okay, I've created it, now just put it out there and then close
Mm,
my eyes.
mm. Totally, totally. Again, playing to your strengths and the level of self-awareness, Mike, that you have is clearly a strength of yours. So just I want to recognize that for our listeners. Again, we try to do so much. The role of an entrepreneur is already by nature really broad and you have to do
Yeah.
so much. And so it would just be extra taxing to go into this with the expectation that all of a sudden you need to be an extrovert to succeed.
Right.
Because that just isn't the case.
Right.
That being said, you are a beloved member of our XYPN community and a fan favorite at XYPN Live. Can you talk a bit about your engagement in our community over the years and how it's moved you forward?
Yeah, yeah. So XYPN, I think it is a little bit of a weird dichotomy of saying, like, yeah, I'm really introverted, but whenever I go to the conference, I think there's something about the safety of, everybody's kind of in that same place, that conversations flow much easier there, whenever you're in kind of this safe place with other people that are going through very similar types of things. And so from the beginning, like the first XYPN, it was just like, wow, this is an amazing kind of vibe with this whole amazing experience. Um, and yeah, just it's weird to look back. It's 2024 now. It's been, so 6 years essentially. It's crazy.
Wow.
That like the number of people that I've met that I've still talked to, kind of, I feel like I have to give a shout out to Brian Face, because he was
Oh,
one of the
hi,
first
Brian.
one. Yeah. And that, like, I met him at the first XY. We still call each other pretty often. He was one of the most, he, he would probably take more credit for the whole beautiful financial plan getting launched too, because even before all the kits and stuff, he's like, dude, you need to put this out there. So but just kind of the people that I've met there, the connections, and how it's actually helped from a business perspective too. Like, marketing isn't just like, hey, I'm creating my blog or my video or whatever and trying to get out to clients. It's networking with other advisors, because, like, kind of like right now, I'm referring out people to other advisors that I've met and that I know, and we've talked business type stuff, to where, like, okay, I know they know what they're talking about, so I have no problem sending people there. That same for me. Like, I would talk with people that were ahead of me, and they had a $10,000 minimum or something like that, and I'm sitting here at a $1,800 minimum, and be like, hey. So there's, I mean, just between that, the study group stuff, because, like, learning more, better for business from the mental aspect of it. I still meet with my launcher group, that
Love.
we, and that's more the one of the kind of the softer side of it, of, like, just celebrating wins, and then also commiserating whenever there's, more kind of struggles with the business. Right.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this incredible podcast, Mike, a couple final questions. Paint the picture for the future of Java. What
Yeah.
do you plan to do in the next decade?
Oh man, decade. Decade's too far. I can only just, like I said, my approach is, I look up every once in a while to say, okay, now this is the direction I want to go in, and I'll look up in another year or two.
Right.
So yeah, right now, I'm primarily solo. I do have somebody that's working with me on a contract basis, who's trying to move into the financial planning space, changing careers. And so I think, personally, I'll probably stay kind of in that primarily solo space with some help. And then I have kicked around a little bit of the idea of doing kind of a residency type program too, for people that are trying to get into the space, where, like, hey, we come work together for a couple of years, and then after that, then kind of have the understanding of, okay, you either go to another firm, or you launch your own thing, or do whatever there. So there's that. I still do want to have some space for the kind of advisor facing, like, beautiful financial plan, like, keep doing stuff with that, because that's definitely, like, that works a different side of my brain that I think needs to still happen. So yeah, kind of like the barbell of that, a little bit of the beautiful financial plan stuff, and then to have some capacity still for, like, kind of the freer stuff, like doing more of the YouTube stuff, and some pro bono work and stuff like that.
Great. What are you most proud about over the past several years?
Ooh, what am I most proud about? I mean, like, I am definitely, I am pretty proud of just what just this journey so far, right? The business that, I mean, I've listened to so many of these podcasts. There's some people that, like, they hit these revenue numbers in, a year or something like that, right? But yeah, I'm definitely proud of the fact that I did this. Yeah, that I was kind of willing to do it, right? And that it's worked well enough for me, right?
Love.
um, there's definitely a level of, like, you still, everyone needs to run their own race, right? Where to not compare yourself too much, with yeah, just where other people are, and that's a continual struggle. Um, but yeah, I think just that part of it, of, like, building this, and Yeah, and kind of feeling like I'm getting to that place of what I set out to do, where it's a business that supports my family, affords me time to, like, I still go to all my son's soccer games and and I take him to every practice, and like can have that time, like, again, while they all want to still hang out with me, because I have my 12-year-old son, and then I have a daughter who's a sophomore right now. So
I'm so glad that you said that, Mike. Everyone needs to run their own race. I think that's such a beautiful piece of advice for folks to remember, that as an entrepreneur, one of the most important things you can do is stay steady in who you are and where you want to go, because so quickly we can just rapidly move directions based on what we read that morning and what's on the podcast the next day.
right.
Um, what other sage pieces of advice do you have for folks listening right now, as they approach this huge, huge change and shift in their lives?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how sage it is, but like, I guess the other thing that I think about is to, like, yeah, to the way I put it is, like, you hold on to clients loosely and don't take things too personally.
Mm.
Especially for us that are building solo firms, like, your business can feel very like it's an extension of you, and so that if a client leaves, which, like, I mean, I don't gloss over it, like, clients leave, right? Especially, and maybe that's a flat fee thing or a tech worker thing or something, but it's like that it happens. Not everyone has the 99, 98% attrition that you always hear. Um, but that, or if prospective clients don't sign up, right? That, like, it's easy to take it personally, because, like, hey, this was like, they've rejected me, or because I built the website and I built the fee structure and I built the planning process and all of that stuff. But yeah, just to not not beat yourself up about that kind of stuff, and that people are just in different places, and there's plenty out there that will make kind of an ideal business for you.
Well said. Well, Mike, we are up on time. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this dialogue with one of XYPN's best members out there. We are so lucky to have you part of our community, Mike. Your clients are so lucky to have you, and your family is so lucky to have you. And I so appreciate you being as open and as transparent and as authentic as you've been over the past hour. Thank you for being on XYPN Radio.
All right, thank you. Loved it.